Sarkaria Commission, 1983, Government of India, Consolidated Recommendations, chapterwise, read by Ramani. Chapter 19, Mass Media, Recommendation 1, Aim, Decentralization to a reasonable extent in the day-to-day operations of radio and television is necessary. B. The two mass media should constantly strive for a harmonious adjustment between the imperatives of national interest and the varied needs and aspirations of the states and their inhabitants. Recommendation 2. The directive contained in Article 351 should be pursued with imagination, vision, and tact by the Union government. The Hindi language used in broadcasts over the media should be enriched by assimilating common words from Hindustani and the other languages referred to in the article, so that all people gradually get used to a uniform vocabulary, at least for certain common terms all over the country. Steps towards such enrichment of Hindi should be taken on a high priority basis. Recommendation 3. The purpose of promoting national integration can only be served through programs of national importance conveyed in the local languages. Recommendation 4. In each region, radio programs are transmitted by the All India Radio in the local language, as also in English and in the other languages of the region. The proposed interlinking of all radio stations through the INSAT link will enable All India Radio to broadcast programs of one station to other stations. It's necessary that such linking of radio stations should be made fully operational as quickly as possible. Recommendation 5. During the 7th 5-year plan, Doordarshan proposes to set up in each state capital a program production center and to link the center to the transmitters in the state through microwave circuits or satellites. While implementing this scheme, the highest priority may be accorded to setting up such centers and linking regional broadcasts from each state capital with those areas in the state which suffer from the maximum handicap in understanding Hindi and English broadcasts. Recommendation 6. A. Every program production center should produce sufficient software in the language of the region so as to occupy all the time except that which may be reasonably required for English and Hindi broadcasts. Software development should give special attention to propagation in regional languages of ideas of national integrity and unity. B. Early arrangements may be made for the translation of national news broadcasts into regional languages or for the dubbing of such news in regional languages as may be appropriate, and for simultaneous translation or dubbing and transmission. Recommendation 7. Earmarking of a particular time period for the national program in English or Hindi should not be uniformly rigid. It should be left to each station or kendra to take into account the prime times for the urban and the rural areas falling within its broadcasting range, and to decide which programs should be transmitted and at what time. Recommendation 8. It has been proposed that during the 7th 5-year plan, mobile field units should transmit to broadcasting stations the material required for general broadcasts. This mode of coverage should be extended to news of interest to rural viewers, including news on rural development. Recommendation 9. The existing restrictions on the broadcasts to be made over the All India Radio and the authority given to the station directors to ensure that a proposed broadcast does not contain prohibited items are essential in the larger national interest and should therefore continue. Recommendation 10. The Intergovernmental Council recommended to be established under Article 263 may consider whether any relaxation of the existing ground rules for political use of broadcasting system should be allowed, and if so, under what conditions. Recommendation 11. If a state government has serious complaints about the use of the media, it can approach the Intergovernmental Council proposed in Chapter 9. Recommendation 12A. A program advisory committee is attached to each All India radio station or a Doordarshan Kendra which originates programs for a duration of not less than 5.5 hours every day. A non-political, competent, non-official may be made chairman, and the director in charge of the station or Kendra may be made deputy chairman of such a committee. B. All broadcasting stations should have their own program advisory committees. C. A specific rule may be introduced that the state government concerned should be consulted in the selection of non-official members and chairman of the program advisory committees in the state. Chapter 20. Miscellaneous matters. 1. Language. 2. Union territories. 3. High Court judges. Language. Recommendation 1. The command of Article 351 is that, in the process of developing Hindi, it's neither desirable nor necessary to replace commonly understood terms by difficult Sanskritized words. The growth of the official language can best be fostered by following the command of Article 351, both in letter and spirit. It would be against the mandate of the Constitution if, in the process of developing the official language, the forms, styles, and expressions of the various regional languages of India, including English, which have become assimilated in Hindustani, are sought to be discarded. Recommendation 2. Service under the union and the state governments is an important avenue for employment for the educated classes in India. Proficiency in a particular language need not be insisted upon at the time of recruitment to ensure that language is not used as a factor to create difficulties in recruitment or subsequent career in services. A person selected for a job usually acquires requisite knowledge of the language in the course of his work. In this, he can be assisted by imparting suitable instruction and in-service training. Recommendation 3. The work of the government, both union and state, which involves or affects the local people, must be carried on in the local language. This is even more important in a welfare state. It is necessary that all forms, applications, letters, bills, notices, etc., are available in the local language as well as the official language. This is of equal relevance to state governments which have sizable linguistic minorities concentrated in certain areas. Recommendation 4. Effective steps should be taken to implement the three-language formula in its true spirit uniformly in all states, in the interests of unity and integrity of the country. Recommendation 5. The Code of Conduct evolved to safeguard the interests of linguistic minorities must be strictly implemented. It's a matter of concern that the post of the Commissioner for Linguistic Minorities has been allowed to remain vacant for a long time. This situation needs to be rectified. Recommendation 6. The agreement at a Chief Minister's conference that wherever there are a certain number of students having a common mother tongue in a school, a teacher of that language should be provided, is not being complied with in many places on grounds of non availability of teachers and financial stringency. The union government should consider providing financial assistances and or maintaining a pool of language teachers to alleviate these difficulties. The Finance Commission should, while recommending fiscal assistance, keep this responsibility of the states in view. Recommendation 7. Politicization of language has often tended to threaten the unity and integrity of the country. There is need for creating appropriate forum at various levels, not only to defuse any potentially explosive situation, but also for evolving a positive approach. The Intergovernmental Council and the zonal councils can play a very useful role in this connection. Recommendation 8. 1. There is a strong case for renaming the Committee of Parliament on Official Language and the Department of Official Language of the Home Ministry and the Directorate General of Hindi of the Ministry of Human Resource Development as Committee of Parliament on Official and Scheduled Languages, Department of Official and Scheduled Language, and Directorate General of Three Language Program, respectively, with a clear mandate to take measures which would promote enrichment of all these languages. 2. The objective of enrichment of all the languages would be considerably helped if some popular books of high quality in different scheduled languages are printed in Devanagari and or Roman scripts with the original text on one page and its translation in Hindi and or English on the page facing it. Union Territories. Recommendation 1. All matters which need to be sorted out between the Union Government and the Union Territory with Legislature may be discussed by a standing committee for the Union Territory. The committee may have the Union Home Minister as chairman and Lieutenant Governor and the Chief Minister of the Union Territory as members. When a matter concerning a Union Ministry other than the Ministry of Home Affairs comes up before the committee, the Union Minister concerned may be co-opted. Recommendation 2. The Standing Committee for the Union Territory may not deal with matters which can appropriately be discussed either in the Zonal Council or in the National Economic and Development Council. High Court Judges. Recommendation 1. Article 217 may be amended by inserting in it a clause as under 1A. The President may, after consultation with the Chief Justice of India, make rules for giving effect to the provisions of Clause 1 of the article, and in order to ensure that vacancies in the posts of judges in the High Courts are promptly filled in, these rules may prescribe a time schedule within which the various functionaries having consultative role in the appointment of judges under this article shall complete their part of the process. Recommendation 2. The healthy convention that as a principle High Court judges are not transferred except with their consent should continue to be observed. Recommendation 3. Advice given by the Chief Justice of India regarding a proposal to transfer a judge after taking into account the latest reaction and the difficulties, if any, should, as a rule of prudence, be invariably accepted by the President and seldom departed from. Recommendation 4. As a matter of healthy practices, The Chief Justice of India should, before formulating an opinion in his individual judgment as to the proposed transfer of a judge from one high court to another, take into confidence two senior judges of the Supreme Court and ascertain their views. Chapter 21, General Observations. Introduction. In the preceding chapters, we have examined in some detail the legislative, administrative, and financial provisions of the Constitution having a bearing on union-state relations. We have also considered how they have performed in practice over the last 37 years. Adhering strictly to our terms of reference, we have confined the earlier chapters of our report essentially to those issues which have a direct impact on the working of the union-state relations. But in the political system, which is originally a whole, there are many peripheral matters which cast their shadow on union-state relations. We will be failing in our duty if we do not take note even of the most important of them. Decentralization. Importance of decentralization of power. In India, because of the diversities in relation, language, caste, race, etc., there are a large number of groups seeking to establish their identity and promote their sectional interests. The issue of devolution of powers and responsibilities between the top two tiers of government, union and states, needs, therefore, to be considered in the context of the broader issue of decentralization between these and other tiers of government on the one hand, and the functional agencies within each of these tiers on the other. The interests and aspirations of most people are concentrated in the localities in which they live and carry on their avocations of life. Normally, they would be content to compete at the level of the local self-governing bodies, making way for persons interested in larger issues of regional or national significance to opt for higher elective forums. Decentralization of real power to these local institutions would thus help diffuse the threat of centrifugal forces, increase popular involvement all along the line, broaden the base of our democratic polity, promote administrative efficiency, and improve the health and stability of intergovernmental relations. Unfortunately, there was not only inadequate territorial and functional decentralization in India when the country became independent, but there has also been a pervasive trend towards greater centralization of powers over the years, inter alia, due to the pressure of powerful socio-economic forces. The Indian Constitution creates two tiers of government, one at the level of the Union and the other at the level of the states. At the sub-state level also, there are tiers which are the creatures of the states. These are Zilla Parishads or District Panchayat Samiti or subdivision in some states, and Panchayat or Thana, Mandal or block in some states. It's noteworthy that the Constitution casts a duty on the state to take steps to organize village panchayats and endow them with powers and authority to enable them to function as units of self government. Article 40. In this system, the district in particular holds a central position. The importance of developing adequate sub-state level political institutions cannot be overemphasized. It's only by providing opportunity to the people that they can be trained to shoulder responsibilities in a system of self government. In 1959, a major experiment in decentralization of power was launched based upon the findings of the Balwant Rai Mehta Committee on Panchayati Raj. Quote, the people are not merely to be consulted, but effective power is to be entrusted to them, unquote, observed Jawaharlal Nehru while inaugurating Panchayati Raj in Rajasthan. For a variety of reasons, this bold experiment has not proved a success. These institutions have been allowed to stagnate. Elections to these bodies have not been regularly held, and often they remain superseded for long periods. While there is considerable reluctance to decentralize powers to the districts, there has been even greater reluctance in most states to decentralize powers to the lower levels like municipalities, panchayat samitis, and panchayats, in spite of the explicit directive in Article 40 of the Constitution. Inefficiency of undue centralization. Since, for reasons explained elsewhere in this report, there is a general tendency towards greater centralization of powers, there is a special need in a country like India for a conscious and purposive effort to counter it all the time. There is considerable truth in the saying that undue centralization leads to blood pressure at the center and anemia at the periphery. The inevitable result is morbidity and inefficiency. Indeed, centralization does not solve but aggravates the problems of the people. We have drawn attention in the chapter on economic and social planning to the need for decentralization of the planning process. The objectives of decentralized planning cannot be achieved unless the Panchayati Raj and other local bodies are allowed full scope to play their role. We are of the view that for this purpose it's necessary that elections are held regularly and adequate finances are devolved on these institutions. To rectify this dysfunctioning of the local self governing bodies, it's necessary to ensure, by legal provisions analogous to those in Articles 172 and 174 of the Constitution, that elections to and sessions of Zilla Parishads and municipal corporations are held regularly, and these institutions do not remain superseded for long periods. The power of enacting such a law vests under Entry 5, List 2, exclusively in the state legislatures. Nevertheless, uniformity in these aspects of the law throughout the territory of India is essential. This uniformity can be secured by adopting, in the following order of preference, any of the alternatives given below. 1. By laws with respect to this matter made by all the state legislatures in accordance with a model bill prepared on the basis of consensus at the forum of the Interstate Council, Intergovernmental Council, recommended by us to be established under Article 263. 2. By a law on this subject made by Parliament under Article 252(1) with the consent of the legislatures of all the states. 3. By a parliamentary law uniformly applicable throughout India, containing provisions analogous to Articles 172 and 174 of the Constitution. Adoption of alternative 1 or 2 will not require any amendment of the Constitution. However, as a condition precedent for adopting alternative 3, Those aspects of the matter which are analogous to Articles 172 and 174 will have to be carved out of the ambit of Entry 5, List 2, and transposed as a separate item to List 3. We recommend that in order to ensure that elections to sessions of Zilla Parishads and municipal corporations are held regularly, and these institutions do not remain superseded for long periods, any one of the alternatives 1 and 2 and 3 be pursued in the order set out above. Resource to alternative 3 may be had only as a last resort when attempts to follow alternatives 1 and 2 fail or are otherwise found infeasible. Citizen participation. Effective participation by citizens is an integral part of democracy. Large parts of the programs, projects, and services initiated by the Union are executed in the states. Many of the programs undertaken by the states also have wider implications for the Union as well as local governments. There is at present no forum where a citizen can present his views on all these matters. No doubt, various issues of national importance would be discussed by the Intergovernmental Council recommended by us, but it will necessarily be in camera. We feel that the IGC should set up an advisory committee of experts which may look into specific intergovernmental problems requiring special knowledge of the subject, such as law, economics, sociology, etc. The proceedings of this committee should be unfettered by the formal positions taken by the various governments and may permit public hearings. This will enhance the acceptability of the programs and solutions suggested by IGC and ensure efficiency in their implementation. In view of the relatively communal nature of some majorities and minorities of different hues of religion, caste, language, race, etc., at different governmental levels of our country, it is most important that democracy is seen as government by compromise between the majority and the minority, and not an authoritarian use by the former of its voting power riding roughshod over the latter. In this context, the sense realism, spirit of moderation, and reluctance to push issues to the extreme that's usually shown by majorities, say in a country like the UK, in contrast with supposedly more logical and less moderate use of voting power by majorities, in some other democracies having much greater relevance for us. If the power of vote that democracy gives us is used thoughtlessly or fanatically along communal lines, it may eventually sound the death knell of secular democracy itself in our heterogeneous society. And this is where sound codes of conduct and conventions play a crucial role. It will be useful if the IGC arranges, through its advisory committee or otherwise, for a periodical review of the deviations from desirable codes of conduct and conventions and considers appropriate corrective action well before the situation takes an unhealthy turn. Working of the Constitution. Constitution basically sound. The working of the Constitution in the last 37 years has demonstrated that its fundamental scheme and provisions have withstood reasonably well the inevitable stresses and strains of the movement of a heterogeneous society towards its development goals. The Constitution has been amended a number of times to adjust its working to the changes in the environment. In our view, it's neither advisable nor necessary to make any drastic changes in the basic character of the Constitution. But there is certainly scope for improvement and reform in a number of aspects, as indicated by us. The actual working of the Constitution leaves much to be desired. A constitution, by its very nature, cannot be too exhaustive, providing for all possible contingencies. If it tried to do so, its labyrinthine complexity and procrustine rigidity would soon render it unworkable in a changing world. As a matter of fact, there is a view that the Indian Constitution is already one of the most detailed in the world. The constitutions of many major countries are much shorter, less detailed, and leave larger scope for judicial interpretation, codes of conduct, and conventions to balance the claims of stability and adaptability in tune with the current needs of a dynamic society. Importance of conventions. Notwithstanding the fact that ours is a detailed constitution, the constitution framers left certain matters to be governed by conventions, thereby giving to the holders of constitutional offices some degree of discretion in respect of such matters. Conventions lubricate the room left at the joints in the constitutional structure and protect them against ossification. Conventions, as John Stuart Mill put it, quote, are unwritten maxims of the Constitution by which the conduct of political authorities is in fact regulated, without which the Constitution would soon lose its stability. Unquote. The main purpose of the constitutional conventions is to ensure that the legal framework of the Constitution retains its flexibility to operate in tune with the prevailing constitutional values of the period. Although conventions are not legally enforceable and the sanction behind them is moral and political, yet some conventions of the Constitution which set norms of behavior of those in power or which regulate the working of the various parts of the Constitution and their relations to one another may be as important, if not of greater significance, as the written word of the Constitution itself. This is particularly true of the role of conventions in a system of parliamentary democracy, having a constitutional distribution of powers between two or more levels of government. The archetypical convention, which requires the governor to appoint only that person as the chief minister, who can head a council of ministers commanding an absolute majority in the legislative assembly, is the essence of the cabinet system of parliamentary democracy, although a breach of this convention is immune from challenge in a court of law. One unfortunate fact of the Indian situation is that enough attention has not been paid to the evolution and observance of the right codes of conduct and conventions. Even the codes and conventions evolved in the earlier years have been broken too lightly in the later years. Expediency has sometimes been given precedence over wisdom and short term advantages over long term benefits. Narrow personal or parochial interests have been given priority over larger national interests. One unwise action has provoked an equally unwise reaction and triggered off a whole chain of adversary relationships. There is an increasing tendency to resort to violence and extra constitutional methods to force settlement of political or economic issues, imagined or real. This would be a cause for concern even in a small, homogeneous country. In India, a heterogeneous country of huge dimensions, this cannot be a matter of grave anxiety. A natural reaction of some people has been that all the loopholes in the Constitution which have permitted aberrant developments should be plugged. It's urged that if conventions do not work, appropriate constitutional safeguards should be provided. If appropriate conventions are not followed and the discretion provided under certain circumstances is missed, the entire system may collapse. In order that appropriate conventions and codes of conduct get evolved, it's essential that incumbents of constitutional offices and other sentinels of the polity are selected from among persons of admitted competence and integrity and provided with reasonable security of tenure. The constitutional amendments having a bearing on union state relations suggested by us, though significant, are not many. These pertain to Article 155, Appointment of Governor, Article 217, Empowering the President to frame rules, Article 248, read with entry 97, List 1, Residuary powers regarding non tax matters, Article 252, 2, regarding amendment of an act passed under Clause 1, Article 269 1F, and Entry 92, List 1, enlargement of their scope, insertion of a provision regarding sharing of corporation tax, analogous to Article 272, Article 276 2, for raising the tax ceiling on professions, trades, etc., Article 356 to ensure its proper and efficacious use, and shifting a part of Entry 5 of List 2 to List 3 for ensuring regular elections to and working of local bodies by an all India stature. But the changes we have proposed in the functional aspects of union state arrangements are far more substantial. The more important of these relate to the role of the governor, reservation of state bills for consideration of the president, use of the extraordinary powers under Article 256, 257, and 356, establishment of a standing intergovernmental council with a comprehensive charter, National Economic and Development Council having a nexus with the Planning Commission formalized under Article 263, limitation on centrally sponsored schemes regarding subjects in the exclusive state field, state finance and planning boards, role of Zilla Parishads and municipal corporations regarding socio-economic planning and development, restraint on excessive occupation by the union of the concurrent field, periodic review of the Industries, Development and Regulation Act 1951, decentralization of powers assumed by law under Entry 52, List 1, loans of states and municipalities, etc. Given mutual trust, confidence, and understanding between the two tiers of polity, our recommendations, it is hoped, if implemented, will go a long way to ensure smooth and harmonious working of the union state arrangements on principles of cooperative federalism, but it's not claimed that they foreclose the need for a countrywide debate in political, academic, and other forums as to their merits, utility, and viability.